and I grabbed my phone. I'm not trying to be high tech. When I lost my eye, and you'll find out a little bit about some of the connection with the Awana conferences and the losing of my eye in just a minute. But when I lost my eye, I started speaking from a device. And so I preached from my phone. Not to be high tech, but so I can blow my letters up so I can see them. I showed my dad what I was doing one day, and he said, wow, even Ray Charles can read those letters. And these are big letters. I want to get right into the message this morning. In the book of James, there are 9 attitudes. And the attitude that I'm going to speak about this morning is very beneficial to all of us who work with children. And the first attitude in the book of James is found in James chapter 1 and verse number 2. Now, you'll hear the attitude right off the bat. It says, my brethren, count it all joy. Say that word with me, joy. Say it again, joy. Say it joyfully, joy. My brethren, count it all joy. Notice this, when you fall into diverse temptations. Now, the temptations being spoken of there is not talking about being tempted unto sin, but rather it's talking about problems, trials, trouble, situations of life that are less than desirable. So let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever faced something in your life that you consider to have been less than desirable? Would you hold your hand in the air? Okay. How many of you faced something this week that you considered to have been less than desirable? How many of you faced something this morning that you consider to be less than desirable? It's a fact of life. Things are not going to go the way you want them to go. Isn't it odd that the Bible says in times like that, there ought to be joy? Imagine the attitude. I'm having a bad day, but I still have joy. It's interesting that the Bible says this is the attitude the Christian should have. But notice this, as it continues, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. Yeah, I need more patience. More patience toward my kids, more patience toward my wife, more patience toward those I work with. Yes, I need more patience. Are there those who could use more patience from time to time? Would you hold your hand in the air if you need more patience? Oh, wonderful. I've got good news. The more problems you have, the more patient you can become. But it continues, the transitional word in verse number 4, but let patience have her perfect work. In other words, when the problems come, and they will, don't fly off the handle and say things you ought not say. Don't take matters into your own hands and do things you ought not do. But just back up and be patient and let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. In other words, there's a benefit that comes our way when we remain under a situation that's less than desirable in a way that honors our faith, in a way that honors God. So say that word joy again, joy. But there's another word we'll add, Romans chapter 5, verse 2, same attitude. Romans chapter 5, verse 2 says this, by whom also we have access by faith into this grace wherein we stand and rejoice. Say that word, rejoice. Rejoice in the hope of the glory of God, and not only so, but we glory. Say that word, glory. We rejoice and we glory in tribulations also. Isn't that amazing? We have 3 words, joy, rejoicing, and glorying. Say those 3 words, joy, rejoicing, and glorying in tribulation, in trials. Imagine the attitude. I'm having a bad day, but I have joy. Well, I'm rejoicing. This is the worst week I have ever had. And glory, it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. Isn't this a strange attitude that the Christian should have? Well, it goes on and says this, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope, and so forth. Then go back near James to 1 Peter chapter 1 and watch this one. It says in verse 6, wherein we greatly rejoice. We're going to add to our rejoicing. We're going to add to our joy. We greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be, ye are in heaviness through manifold temptations. Those manifold temptations, those are the problems that compound themselves one upon the other. Have you had a day where nothing went right? It's a day's nothing. I've had weeks like that. One problem compounding itself upon another. Isn't it odd that the Bible says in times like that there ought to be great rejoicing? Can you imagine that? I'm having more problems than I can imagine, but I'm extremely happy about them. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It seems to be a paradox, but notice this. It says, though it brings heaviness and sorrow, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto the praise and honor and glory of Jesus Christ. One day we'll stand before God and give an account for how we handled the bumps in the road. For many of the trials, many of the problems, many of the situations that were less than desirable came for our benefit to mold us into the image of Christ. It's how we handled those situations and our attitude in those situations that determined whether or not the work of God was completed in our life. So let me describe these passages. Joy, rejoicing, glorying, great rejoicing. Say the four with me. Joy, rejoicing, glorying, and great rejoicing. Why does the Bible say this should be our attitude? A number of years ago, we were traveling throughout the United States in our travel trailer. Had the whole family, 3 kids, my wife. And as they had gotten older, we needed something larger. And to make a long story short, a glorious story, God provided for us a brand new travel trailer, free and clear. Absolutely amazing. The man who wrote the check for it, it was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful gift. It may well have been the largest travel trailer in the United States at the time. It was 47 feet long. It had 5 electronic slide-out rooms. You just push buttons and rooms came out from everywhere. It was 13 feet 6 inches tall. It was the same size with my truck as a semi. Now, I had a truck that I was pulling the other trailer with. It was a Dodge Dreamer. And everybody said, you know, that truck will never pull that trailer. That trailer's too big. That truck's too little. So I started asking professionals their advice. And everybody concurred the engine would be strong enough. Had a 440 engine. That'd be strong enough. But probably the weak link would be the transmission. I lived in San Francisco until I took it to South San Francisco to a transmission shop. And I said, look, can you beef up this transmission? And they said, oh, yeah. When we put stronger parts in it, nothing will destroy the transmission we put in this truck. So confidently, I left it with them. 1 week later, he called me and said, Steve, your truck's ready. And I went to pick up my truck, and he handed me the bill, $1,400. Now, he didn't put a new transmission in the truck. He just beefed it up with stronger parts. $1,400. As I'm looking at the bill, there's not a lot of joy. I'm not rejoicing, and I'm saying, glory, what a bill this is. But I just flippantly write out the check, and I say, well, I guess that truck will pull that trailer now, won't it? He said, Steve, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I want to know. Don't you know how much $1,400 is? I want to know. Oh, it's at that moment I could jump up on the counter and rearrange his facial expression with my feet. But let me ask you something. If I do the man bodily harm, will that make my transmission stronger? Yes or no? No. If I tell him off and say things I ought not say as a Christian, will that make my transmission stronger? Yes or no? Nothing I say changes this situation. Nothing I do changes this situation. I have learned in a situation like this that it may well be the best thing the Christian could say. Oh, well. I want you to say those words with me together. Are you ready? Oh, well. You may need those words this week. Use the same voice inflection when things aren't going the way you want them to go. Just simply back up and patiently say, oh, well, let's see what God is going to do through this situation that'll be a benefit to me. Well, I went to Kansas City, Missouri, Concordia, Missouri, to pick up the travel trailer. It was built by Spacecraft Industries there, and Walt Brock from Ironwood Camp in California, where I was staff evangelist, he met me there and was going to follow me back to California in case there was a problem. But he said, Steve, let's just hook it up. Let's go down the interstate and come back. Let's just to see how it performs before we leave town. Good idea. So we hooked it up. We got out on the interstate, 50, 55, 60, 65 miles per hour. Talk about joy. I had joy. I was rejoicing. Glory, this is wonderful. It works. So we turned around, came back to the very ramp we departed from. I got out, walked behind the trailer. I said, Walt, it's working great. He said, good. Hit the road to California. 5 miles later. 5 miles later, smoke starts boiling out from under the truck. I have blown the $1,400 transmission. What do you say at a moment like that? Yeah. I've seen people with their vehicles. They have a flat tire. What do? They kick it. Flat tire. What good does that do? It hurts a foot. Or they sit in a car that will not start and they bang on the dashboard. Or they get out and open the hood. They don't know why they did that because they don't understand anything that's up under there. You can tell your car off and it still won't start. Oh, well. So we went and called for a wrecker. I said, I need a big wrecker. I'm 66 feet long from the front of my truck to the back of my trailer. Same size as a semi. We need a big wrecker. We'll send one. So we waited and waited and waited. And this little bitty pickup came. Had a little bitty boom on the back of it. I thought it was a man passing by, just stopping to see if he could lend assistance. But it was he who they sent. And I said, you're not going to try to pull that with that, are you? He said, I can pull your rig. So he backed it up, jacked it up, hooked it up in a way I've never seen done. He did not use a chain. I had an air damper that hung very close to the ground. He was scared he might mar to tear it off. So he cradled the 2 front tires in nylon straps. I got in his wrecker and we drove off. I'll confess, I was impressed. His little bitty truck pulled my whole rig. We could not carry on a conversation, however, because the truck was wide open and barely moving, but it was moving. And we went down the interstate just a few miles, and we got off the ramp, and we went down the ramp to the stop sign. There was an important word there. We went down. As we were going down, the massive weight of the trailer took control and started pushing. It snapped at the straps and drove the front end of my beautiful Dodge Dreamer into the back end of his wrecker and bashed the whole front end in. What do you say in a moment like that? Yeah. I'll never forget what he said. When he got out and walked back and saw the front end of my truck all bashed in, he said, oops. Oops? What do you mean, oops, you incompetent record driver? Look what you've done to my truck. Oh, at that moment, I could pound him into the ground. Or I could tell him off and say things I ought not say as a Christian, and neither would change my situation. Best thing I can do is just back up and say, oh, well. He hooked it up again using the same nylon straps. Double wrap around the tires. He says that'll hold it. We got back in the wrecker. We turned to the left, went under the interstate, and went up the hill to the stoplight. We're just sitting there minding our own business when all of a sudden, pow! The straps snapped again. I looked out the window, and there go the truck and trailer leaving the wrecker. Cars behind it, peeling off to the right and left. Not one thing I can do. In excess of $87,000 going bye-bye, and I've never spent one night in it. Watch out, here it comes. He jumped out of the wrecker and started running after it. It's at a moment like this, I could take matters into my own hands. Wrecker driver, stop right here, front center right now. I have had it with you. Would that have helped? No, the best thing I can do is let him keep running in case he can catch up with it. Sometimes the words we say hinder the process. They don't help the process. I had a strange thought watching him run down the road. Oh man, I wonder if I locked the door. He jumped in, he stopped it. The amazing thing, hit nothing. Amazing thing, it went just as straight backwards down that road as it could go. Those things don't back straight by themselves. They don't back straight when you're trying to back them straight. Well, he went up and got the wrecker at the top of the hill and brought it down and hooked it up a third time. This time he used a chain. I like chains. But the reason he used a chain by this time, he's torn the whole front end off the truck. You can hook a chain anywhere you want to. You've got full access to the frame. We dropped it off at a church in Blue Springs, Missouri, and the next day I took the truck to a transmission shop. They said, you know, this truck should work. Maybe they made a mistake when they rebuilt the transmission. Let us rebuild it. And so they rebuilt it, and 3 days later, we tried pulling again. I went 8 miles. Blew that transmission. Oh, well. We took it back. They were convinced it should work. They put a bigger pump on to get more fluid, to keep it cooler. 3 days later, we tried pulling again. Went 5 miles. Blew that transmission. 3 transmissions, and I haven't even left town. I figured it out. This truck won't work. I'm a little bit slow. We put the 4th transmission in. I drove back to California and left the trailer. I hired Morgan Transfer Company to deliver my trailer. They charged me $1,800 for the delivery. $1,800, money I didn't have. $1,800, bill I didn't want. $1,800, bill I didn't expect. How many ever got a bill you didn't expect, bill you didn't want, bill you didn't have money for? Would you hold your hand in there? What'd you say when you got it? Oh, no, you did not. I got a telephone call waiting for my trailer. Is this Steve Pigott? Yes, it is. This is Morgan Transfer Company. We're dropping your trailer in Kingman, Arizona. We blew the engine in our truck, and we're not pulling this trailer another inch. What do you mean you're dropping my trailer? I paid you $1,800. I want my trailer. Have you ever expressed your will? Sometimes people can express their will in some odd places. Sometimes in a restaurant, they're not getting the service they think they deserve. And they can express their will, their pleasure, their displeasure, the lack of tip or whatever. Nothing we say, nothing we do changes the situation. An evangelist friend of mine, Harvey Seidel, had just bought the biggest Dodge truck with the biggest Cummins engine in it, and he had bragged to me, Steve, this truck will pull anything. So I called him. Harvey, how's that truck of yours? Oh, it's great. Harvey, I got a trailer in Kingman, Arizona. Do you think your truck would pull my trailer into San Francisco? Yeah, sure. Good. So we went and got it, and it did. Pulled across the mountains all the way into the city. Absolutely no problem. Great truck, strong truck. Less than 1 week later, Harvey called me. Steve, yes, sir? I'm having to put a new transmission in my truck. I blew his transmission too. It's at this point you need to learn a valuable lesson. When he told me that, it would have been wrong for me to have said, oh, well. Understand the words I'm using this morning are not public words. They're private words. When things aren't going the way we want them to go in life, in the quietness of our spirit, we just back up and say, oh, well, let's see what God is going to do through this situation that becomes a benefit to me. But these are not words you use to someone else. Imagine a husband and wife are having difficulty in their marriage. And she says to him, honey, these are the things you do that bother me. He should not say, oh, well, that won't work. I went to the eye doctor just to get new contacts. When I put the new contacts in, I said, Doc, these are no different. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, let me describe it to you like this. He said, if I close my right eye and look at you out of my left eye, everything looks okay. But if I close my left eye and look at you out of my right eye, doctor, your head is gone. I could look at my hand, I could see the palm, but I couldn't see the fingers. I'd look at a picture on the wall. I could see some of the picture, but not all of it. I had a lot of fun for that for a couple of days. Do you know there are a lot of people that look better without a head? It's amazing. Immediately, the doctor said, whoa, that's not our contact. There must be something very serious wrong with your eye. And they sent me in for testing. For 3 hours, they were probing around in the eye, shining lights in the eye. It is unbelievable what they can do to your eye while it's still in your head. 3 hours. My wife had been in the waiting room. He said, would you like your wife to join us? I said, sure. I thought he was being kind because she'd been out there by herself for 3 hours. We walked into his office. He closed the door. He drew a line across the board. He said, I need to talk to both of you about survival rate. And my wife said, survival rate of his eye? No, ma'am, of his life. What we're dealing with is a spiral melanoma, very serious cancer, and because of the proximity to the brain, he was assuming I had one, this is very serious. You have no options. The only option you have is enucleation. I didn't even know what that word was. He said, take the eye out, and we recommend it immediately. What do you say at a moment like that? My wife will tell you the first words out of my mouth, from whence comes the thought this morning. Oh, well. There's not one thing I can do that changes the situation. There's not one thing I can say that changes the situation. What I'm talking about this morning are those events that come into our life that all of us will face at one time or another when there's absolutely nothing that can be done, that you can do or that you can say. It's a situation that comes into your life. How we respond to that situation is extremely important. Oh, I'll never forget. When I left the Awana conference, I think you said it was probably at Hebron. We did the conference on a Saturday. I had spoken Stone Mountain, Georgia, and flew back Monday for my, are you ready for this? Outpatient surgery. I was not admitted to the hospital. I went to the hospital. They took the eye out, and 3 hours later, I went home. An outpatient surgery. I'll never forget that day. I walked into the Fairfax Hospital there in Fairfax, Virginia. I said, hello, I'm Steve Pigott here for surgery. And they could not find my name anywhere. She said, maybe they have your paperwork downstairs. So I went downstairs. The lady they told me to go to, walked up to another lady. I said, hello, I'm Steve Pigott. I'm here for surgery. She said, yes, we've been expecting you. And she turned around and she got my file and she opened it up. And then she said, now, what are you having done today? What does the file say I'm having done? I said, ma'am, I'm having an eye removed. Oh, that sounds serious. Yes, ma'am, I guess so. Which one? You ever want to just get in your car and go home? Come back on another day when everybody knows what we're doing? I said, ma'am, I'm having the right eye removed. The Bible says, if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out. Doesn't say anything about the left eye. And by the way, if any of you know who Ron Hamilton, Patch the Pirate is, that's the vast difference between Ron Hamilton and myself. He took his other eye out. That's not biblical. But anyway, I wanted to make sure the doctor knew. So when Dr. Perman came in, he said, Steve, how you doing? I said, I'm doing fine. I have a question for you, though. What's that? Which eye are we removing? He said, the right one. Uh-huh. Is that your right or my right? That makes a difference when you're facing somebody. He said, you're right. I said, you have a pen in your pocket? Yep, take it out. I want you to put an arrow right there. And he did. He took it, put an arrow right there, which, by the way, is law now. I don't know if you know why, but 2020 did a report on the wrong side operations performed in the United States. There have been over 15,000 wrong side operations. It came to bear in Tampa, Florida. A guy was having an arm amputated. They took the wrong one. Same hospital, Tampa, Florida. 1 month later, a guy was having a leg amputated, took the wrong leg. And as a result of those two incidences, the report was done by 2020 and discovered 15,000 wrong side operations. And now, it's law. They write on your body, operate here, don't touch anything over here. But when he left, I had a thought. I wonder if he's going to remember what the mark is for. Is that the one I leave or is that the one I take out? Well, he got the right one. And so when we were leaving, he told my wife, the only thing Steve will need is Tylenol. He missed that one. When I got home, whatever they had given me wore off, pain kicked in, and my wife called him back, Steve needs something for pain. He said, okay, I'll put in an order for Percocet. I like Percocet. For 3 days, I didn't even know I had eyes. I didn't even know I had a head. I used to preach, I have never done drugs. Can't preach that one anymore. But you know, by the end of the same week, I was headed to the next Awana conference in Vancouver, Canada. You get over it very rapidly. We had not told the people I was coming wearing a patch. We had not told the people that I'd lost an eye. Bobby Finch, Rob Diaz, who were traveling with me at the time, we were setting up on Friday night in lieu of the conference on Saturday. One of the ladies at the church walked up to Rob Diaz, the piano player, and she says, oh, I'm so sorry that Mr. Pigott lost his eye. Is that going to affect his vision? Duh. Lady, poke your eye out with an ice pick. Does that affect your vision? Sure, it affects your vision. Yeah. I can turn, all those people over there are gone. I don't even see them anymore. It was at the same meeting. Went back to the motel room. I had forgotten my contact solution in my contact case. I went to Bobby's room and said, Bobby, I need to go see if I can find a contact case or contact solution. We went to a Safeway store late at night. It was near midnight. Found the contact solution. Couldn't find a contact case. I said, ma'am, you have any contact cases at all? She says, no, we're out of them. She says, but I can get you some bottles from the pharmacy. Okay. So she goes and comes back with 2 of them. Sets them on the counter. She opens the door. Very kind lady. She opens the door, takes out a magic marker. She was going to write on them. I said, ma'am, look at me. I don't think I'm going to need but 1 of those bottles. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll just put a L on this one. I said, thank you. That'll help me keep it straight. 1 eye, 1 contact. I don't get it confused anymore. Some of the most hilarious things have happened to me since I've lost my eye. I have had so much fun having 1 eye. It's been a blast. I'm thinking about taking the other one out. I mean, that's just got to be hilarious. I was coming back from Ironwood Camp, flying back into Washington, D.C. I was taking the red-eye flight from the Las Vegas airport back into D.C. Now, I was not wearing my patch that night. There are times I wear the patch. I usually wear it all the time in public. I have a drainage issue they've never been able to solve. I have a fake eye. It looks good. But it's a drainage issue, and I just wear the patch for your benefit. And so there are times I don't wear the patch. I don't wear the patch at home. My wife understands the situation. My boys understood the situation. And sometimes when I get on a plane late at night, I don't wear the patch. I love doing this. Because all I'm going to do is get on the plane and go to sleep. But this eye does not close. So I lay back in the seat. I got 1 eye wide open, just staring at everybody. I've had people shake me. They think I had a heart attack or a stroke. I'm just trying to sleep. Yeah, but your eye's wide open. Yeah, I know. I keep an eye on things while I'm sleeping. That night, I walked up to the counter, United Airlines in Las Vegas Airport. Looked like a normal person with 2 eyes. And I noticed there was a flight going to the Washington Dulles Airport. I had been scheduled for Baltimore. And I said, can I get on that plane instead? It's much easier for my wife to pick me up when I get home. And she said, yes, you can, but you'll have to hurry to catch that flight. So I was running through the airport, looked like a normal person with two eyes, running through the airport, and I ran over a lady. I never saw her. You see, I don't see my hand right there. And I was running through there, and she came out of the right side, and I hit her, and unfortunately, I hit her pretty hard, and she turned on me. Oh, did she let me have it? I said, ma'am, I am so sorry, but I did not see you. You had to have seen me. Oh, she just chewed on me like a little chihuahua. I said, ma'am, honestly, I did not see you. She wouldn't turn it loose. I thought, well, that's enough of this. I just reached up and I took my eye out. I said, ma'am, honestly, I didn't see you. But I pointed my eyepiece toward her, but I see you now. You say, Brother Steve, you ought not do that. I know. But it's my eye, and I paid thousands of dollars for it, and I think I have the right to have fun with it if I want to. I came back into the Washington Dulles Airport. I walked into the red carpet room, United Airlines, and there was a lady sitting behind the desk. Her name is Sharon, and she's helped me with tickets for years. And she had a medical bandage on her eye. I said, Sharon, what's the problem? She says, I'm facing eye surgery. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What's the issue? She said, well, they discovered a growth in my eye, and they don't know if they're going to be able to treat it or if I'll have to have my eye removed. I said, well, you know, I've been through the same situation. Well, I know you started wearing a patch, but I've never asked why. I wanted to be an encouragement to her. When you've been through a situation, you can encourage those who are facing the same situation. So I wanted to be an encouragement to her. I said, well, my situation was much like yours. There was a growth in the eye. The only problem was mine was on the optic nerve, and there was nothing that could be done to save the eye. The best option for me was to have the eye removed. I said, but it's not a big deal. It's an outpatient surgery, and you get over it rapidly. I said, by the end of the same week, I was back on the airplane headed to the next meeting. And I said, the eyepieces that they have now are so realistic looking. They move, they track, they look so normal. I said, would you like to see my eye? And she said, yes. And so I did what I always do. I turned around, I cleaned the eye, made it presentable, and I turned back around and I lifted the patch so she could see it, and she looked and turned away. And she would not look back. And I thought, that's odd, because most people, when they ask to see it, they'll study it and say, wow, that really does look good. But she wouldn't look at it again. I kept encouraging her how natural it looks and how normal it looks. In fact, nobody would ever know, but she would not look. And I just couldn't get out of my mind, why would she not look? Well, I continued to console her. Eventually, I had to leave. So I got the tram, went over to the main terminal. I couldn't get out of my mind. Why wouldn't she look? I thought, oh, man, I wonder if when I cleaned it, that inadvertently I had turned it and showed it to her crooked. So I walked into a men's restroom, walked up to the mirror, lifted the patch, and sure enough, that eye was looking up over there like that. One eye was looking straight ahead, and one eye was looking out the top of her head, and I told her how natural it looks. I said, nobody will ever even know that you had the surgery. And I felt so bad. But I could not get back through security to get back to that room. 3 days later, I'm at the airport. Immediately, I go to the red carpet room. I walk in. She's sitting there. And I said, Sharon, I have got to apologize to you. She said, why? I said, I had no idea when I showed you my eye the other day that I had turned it and showed it to you crooked. She says, oh, I don't think a thing about it. Because when you walked out those doors, I thought to myself, there goes the most positive man I've ever met in my life. If you thought that eye looked good. She said that was the most horrendous thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was trying to help her. I don't know if you catch on. I suspect you do. I do not have a problem having one eye, and I never have. My boys can tell you. My wife can tell you. The guys that travel with me can tell you. I'll tell you what I attribute it to. I attribute it to an attitude. You know, as long as you have the right attitude, no matter what's happening in your life, I'm here to tell you things are going to come out okay. But if you have the wrong attitude, it'll eat you alive. I've been in the ministry nearly 45 years, and over the years of traveling, I've seen how people have handled their situations that were less than desirable. I've spent my life in church, and so it's the church where I've seen people the most. But I know family members. They no longer speak to one another because one day somebody said something, or one day something was done that the others did not like, and all of a sudden there's this breach between them. This root of bitterness springs up, and they no longer talk to one another. Family members no longer talk to one another. I know people in churches who were good friends together in churches, but because one day something was done that the other didn't like, or something was said that the other didn't like, they no longer speak to one another, and sometimes they no longer even attend church. I know people even on church staffs who are in the ministry because something didn't go the way they wanted it to go with their church. Words were exchanged, things were done, and all of a sudden these people are out of the ministry and out of church. I know people who've gotten mad at God. God, this is not fair. I don't deserve the things I'm going through. And they say things to God they ought not say and do things they ought not do. And I know people who've been bitter at God for years. I believe it's at a time like this when one should consider the prayer of the psalmist. Lord, renew a right spirit within me. Renew a right attitude within me. Why does the Bible say, as we come to the end of the message, why does the Bible say that there ought to be joy and rejoicing and glorying and great rejoicing? Why is this the instruction given to the child of God? I'll give two reasons, much without explanation. Number one, in the book of Nehemiah, the Bible says, the joy of the Lord is my strength. We lose our joy, we lose our effectiveness. It's our strength. But perhaps if there were no other reason, our testimony is at stake. Imagine I'm on the mountaintop. Woohoo! There's joy on the mountaintop. And rejoicing. Glory, it's wonderful here. Everything's going my way. That's the way everyone acts on the mountaintop. But imagine as a child of God, I'm in some of the deepest, darkest waters that I've ever been in my life. And yet, in the midst of that, I still have joy, peace, contentment. That my God has never made a mistake and He's in control of everything. And I have my confidence, my peace, my joy in my God. People on the outside, they begin to look in and say, I don't understand it. What sustains that individual? What holds that individual up? I need what that individual has. I'm convinced our testimony shines at its brightest when we're in the valley. Much brighter than when we're on the mountaintop. Lord, renew a right spirit within me. You know, working with young people, sometimes we can lose our cool. Sometimes we can say things we ought not say. Sometimes we can get tired of the whole situation, throw in the towel and quit. Who loses? Everybody does. The young people lose because we're no longer there to minister to them. We lose because we're not having the opportunity to minister. Things are not always going to go the way we want them to go. They're not going to go the way you want them to go in club. They're not going to go the way you want them to go sometimes in church. They're not going to go the way you want them to go sometimes at home. It's just a fact of life. So when things aren't going the way we want them to go, we just back up and patiently say, oh well. If things do not go the way you want them to go today, you just back up and say, if you don't get enough donuts, you just say, if they run out of Chick-fil-A, you just say. It's an attitude for the child of God. Thank you very much.